Welcome to Hidden Truths, where we uncover the things no one dares to question. In a world drowning in noise, we seek the quiet truths buried beneath comfort, success, and modern life. Today's truth is one you feel, but haven't yet named. They promise to make your life easier. One click, one swipe, one delivery. No lines, no waiting, no thinking. But what if ease was never the goal? What if convenience is the trap, and every small comfort is another link in the chain? In this episode, we expose the convenience cage, how the modern world seduced us with simplicity and quietly took away our freedom. Because they didn't take your power with violence, they took it with free shipping. The illusion of progress. They told us the world was getting better, faster, smarter, easier. You no longer have to walk to the store. It comes to you. You no longer have to cook. It arrives at your door, still warm. You no longer have to remember. A device in your pocket holds your passwords, your calendar, your bank account, your memories. Life, they say, is progress because it's become effortless. But here's the hidden truth no one wants to admit. Not everything that feels like progress is freedom. Sometimes what we call progress is actually permission. Permission granted by someone else. Permission that can be taken away. The more they help you do, the less you remember how to do yourself. The more they make life easy, the more fragile you become. And one day you wake up in a world that runs smoothly until it doesn't. Until the app doesn't work, the delivery is late, the battery dies, the network is down, and suddenly you're helpless in your own life. Once upon a time, people knew how to live. Before convenience, there was competence. People knew how to grow their food, fix their roofs, sew their clothes, start a fire, read a map. Not because they were smarter, but because they had no other choice. You learned or you suffered. You adapted or you didn't survive. Today, you can go years, decades without doing a single thing for yourself, and no one questions it. In fact, you're rewarded for it. You're seen as efficient if you automate your bills, outsource your chores, and let algorithms think for you. But if someone dropped you in the woods or simply turned off the Wi-Fi, how long would you last? We live in a world that applauds ease, but secretly punishes independence. Because when you know how to live without the system, you become harder to control. Comfort has replaced capability. Progress was once measured by what we could do. Now it's measured by what we don't have to do. We cheer when we no longer have to cook, drive, write, plan, or remember. We celebrate the latest product that removes another task from our hands. And in doing so, we quietly remove another skill from our lives. They told us we were becoming smarter, but we'd become specialized in ignorance. We know how to swipe, scroll, tap, and click, but ask us to change a tire, grow a vegetable, or navigate without a screen, and many of us freeze. We've traded ability for accessibility, self-reliance for subscription, confidence for comfort, and we call it progress. The paradox of progress. Here's the paradox no one wants to say out loud. The more effortless life becomes, the harder it is to live freely. Because effortless living requires infrastructure. It requires a system to carry the weight you no longer do. And systems, by nature, are controlled by governments, by corporations, by algorithms, by someone who isn't you. You are free as long as the system is running. But if the lights go out, or the app disappears, or the rule changes overnight, then what? We've built a world where survival depends on not your hands or your mind, but on your access. Access to energy, access to services, access to data, access to accounts. And whoever controls that access controls you. Progress that disempowers isn't progress. Real progress should make people stronger, wiser, and more capable. But modern progress often does the opposite. It makes you faster, but less patient. It gives you answers, but kills your curiosity. It connects you, but leaves you lonely. It feeds you, but poisons your body. It frees your time, but fills it with noise. And worst of all, it convinces you that you're better off not knowing how to live without it. That's not progress. That's programming. Convenience has become a cage, and most people have decorated it so well they don't even see the bars anymore. The question no one ever asks, what am I giving up for this convenience? We ask, is it cheaper? Is it faster? Is it easier? But we never ask, what happens if I can't access it tomorrow? What happens when I forget how to do it myself? What does this make me dependent on? Every time-saving tool rewires your brain. Every shortcut reshapes your instincts. And soon you stop choosing what's best. You choose what's easy. Because easy feels safe, until the world changes and easy disappears. Then, all that's left is you, and you no longer know what to do. The future of progress must be different. Real progress is not about removing all friction. It's about building a society where people are capable, not just comfortable. Where technology supports you but doesn't own you. Where systems empower you but don't replace you. Where ease is an option but not a prison. The future we need isn't filled with more apps and faster delivery. It's filled with people who can think clearly, act independently, and live resiliently, even when the system stutters. Because the truth is, the easier life becomes, the more dangerous it is to forget how hard it once was. The illusion of progress is powerful, but illusions don't last forever. And one day, comfort won't be enough to save you. The real question is, will you still know how to save yourself? The invisible trade-off. No one ever told you that convenience came with a price, because the price isn't obvious. It's not on the label. It doesn't show up on your receipt, and you rarely notice it until it's gone. That's why it's the perfect trap. You thought you were just ordering dinner, but you were giving up your ability to cook. You thought you were just letting an app guide you, but you were giving up your sense of direction. You thought you were just saving time, but you were giving away autonomy, resilience, and presence. The trade-off isn't in money, it's in muscle memory. It's in mental discipline. It's in freedom. Convenience is never free. Every time something gets easier, something gets taken away. But the exchange is so smooth, so well designed, so pleasurable, you don't question it. You don't see it as a cost, you see it as an upgrade. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Convenience is a contract. You just didn't read the fine print. Let's break it down. You gain instant food, auto bills, voice assistants, algorithmic news, smart homes,
digital wallets, cloud memory. You lose cooking skills, budgeting habits, research effort, curiosity, handwriting, cash discipline, actual memory. And over time, you lose something even more sacred, the belief that you can live without all of it. Comfort shrinks your range of motion. The more comfortable you become, the smaller your world gets. You stop exploring, you stop learning, you stop solving problems because there's an app for that. You stop feeling the need to try, because trying is friction. Friction is uncomfortable, but friction is also how you grow. Muscles grow from resistance. Wisdom comes from effort. Freedom comes from knowing that even if the system fails, you won't. But if your life has become a long string of frictionless moments, delivered, auto-renewed, swiped, and scheduled, then you've built your lifestyle on dependency. And dependency is never free. You're paying in data, not dollars. You may think the app is free. You may think the service is cheap. You may think it's just a few clicks. But what you're actually giving away is you. Your preferences, your location, your conversations, your habits, your behavior, your weaknesses. Every time you choose convenience, you give the system more information about how to keep you hooked. More accurate predictions, more targeted manipulation, more ways to make sure you never leave. You think you're saving time, they're harvesting control. Because in the modern economy, you are the product. Your attention, your time, your trust. And once they've got those, they don't need your money. They just need you to stay. The trade-off becomes invisible because it's gradual. It doesn't happen all at once. No one wakes up and says, "I want to be helpless today." It happens slowly. You used to remember phone numbers. Now you don't. You used to write ideas down. Now you wait for a notification. You used to talk to people. Now you text them while standing next to them. You used to make your own plans. Now you wait for suggestions from apps that know you better. Each step feels like a win until you realize you've forgotten how to walk. And when you finally do notice it, you feel ashamed. Ashamed that you don't know how to live without the things you once lived without. So you stay and tell yourself it's not that bad. That's the brilliance of the invisible trade-off. You don't resist it because you never realized you agreed to it. Convenience changes the question. In a healthy, free life, the questions sound like this. What's the best choice for me? What do I want to create? What am I capable of doing myself? But in a convenience-based life, the questions become, what's the fastest option? What takes the least effort? What has the least friction? And once your brain gets used to asking these questions, it stops asking the ones that matter. You stop asking, is this good for me? And you start asking, is it easy enough? That's not freedom, that's surrender. The dangerous comfort of outsourcing. When you outsource your tasks, you think you're being smart, and sometimes you are. But when you outsource your thinking, your choices, your self-awareness, you're not being efficient, you're being erased, one algorithm at a time. You let Netflix pick your next show. You let Amazon tell you what to buy. You let Google decide what you see. You let food delivery replace home-cooked meals. You let your phone tell you when to breathe, stand, sleep, and move. Soon, you're not living. You're being managed. And worst of all, you're grateful for it. Because it's easy, because it works, because everyone else is doing it. But freedom doesn't live in the middle of what everyone else is doing. Freedom lives in the inconvenient, the difficult, the decisions you still make for yourself. A silent theft. You didn't notice it happening. You were busy, tired, trying to save time, trying to survive, trying to keep up. So when they offered you tools that made life easier, you said yes. And why wouldn't you? But with every yes, a no happened in the background. You said yes to speed. You said no to patience. You said yes to delivery. You said no to learning. You said yes to frictionless design. You said no to critical thought. Bit by bit, your world became smoother, but also shallower. Easier, but also lonelier. This wasn't theft by force. It was theft by invitation. You invited it. You welcomed it. You even celebrated it. Because no one told you that you were trading pieces of your humanity for a little more comfort. But it's not too late. Here's the good news. Every trade-off can be reversed. You can learn again. You can practice again. You can wake up again. You can take back the things you outsourced. You can question the systems you rely on. You can choose to be uncomfortable so you can be free. Because every time you do something the hard way, every time you resist the shortcut, every time you think instead of swipe, you're reclaiming something that belongs to you. Not just your time, not just your skill, but your sovereignty. Because you were never meant to live a life that runs without you. You were meant to be the driver, not the passenger, the creator, not the consumer, the question asker, not the algorithm's puppet. So the next time something feels too easy, pause and ask, what am I trading for this? Because the trade-off is always there. And the longer you ignore it, the more invisible and irreversible it becomes.
From empowerment to dependency. Technology promised to empower you. And at first, it did. Maps gave you confidence. Search engines gave you answers. Smartphones gave you access. Apps gave you options. Social media gave you connection. You felt more capable, more informed, more in control. But here's the part they never mentioned. The same tools that empower you can eventually enslave you if you stop using them with intention. And slowly, most people did. The line between helper and master. Every tool begins as a helper, something to assist, accelerate, simplify. But when a helper becomes your default and you can no longer function without it, it quietly becomes your master. The knife that helps you cook becomes a danger if you forget how to hold it. The calculator that saves time becomes a crutch when you forget how to think. The app that navigates for you becomes a trap when you no longer recognize your own city. Empowerment fades, dependency grows. And the shift is so subtle, most people don't even notice it. Until one day, the tool breaks, and they break with it. You were given superpowers and forgot how to walk. Technology gave us flight, but we forgot how to climb. It gave us instant answers, but we stopped asking better questions. It gave us filters and captions, but we lost the courage to speak without edits. It gave us choices, endless choices, but now even choosing feels exhausting. This is the trap of too much ease. When you get used to power you didn't earn, you become terrified of effort.
And when that fear grows, dependency becomes your comfort zone. Not because you're lazy, but because you forgot that you can live without it. How empowerment becomes addiction. The early internet felt like freedom, a library, a town square, a megaphone. But over time, the lines blurred. You stopped using it on your own terms, and it started using you. The scroll became endless. The feed became addictive. The suggestions became assumptions. The data became destiny. And now you don't choose what to see. You're shown what they think will keep you there. That's not empowerment. That's programming. And the longer you stay inside the system, the more dependent you become on its rhythm, its rewards, its rules. You're still free, technically, but in practice, you haven't made a real choice in years. When effort becomes unthinkable. There was a time when learning something new was exciting. Now it's inconvenient. There was a time when walking somewhere felt normal. Now it feels like a punishment. There was a time when patience was a virtue. Now it's a glitch. We've grown so used to shortcuts that effort feels unnatural. Even a simple task, like cooking, calling someone, or reading a full article, feels like too much. And so we avoid them, outsource them, ignore them, until we've built a life that is perfectly efficient and perfectly hollow. The dependency mindset. Dependency doesn't just change your actions, it rewires your mind. You begin to wait for answers instead of seeking them. Expect support instead of building strength. Avoid discomfort instead of growing through it. Blame systems instead of taking responsibility. Panic when things break instead of adapting. This is the mindset of a domesticated life. Tame, safe, comfortable, powerless. You may have access to the world, but you no longer have access to yourself. Why dependency feels safe but isn't? Here's the great lie. Let the system do it for you. It's safer that way. And in the short term, it's true. It's easier to let Google remember your passwords. It's safer to let Waze guide every turn. It's faster to let ChatGPT think through your ideas. But safety has a price. It trains you to believe you're not capable. And over time, that belief hardens. You stop trusting your judgment. You stop building resilience. You stop trying because the system seems smarter, faster, better. So you surrender. Not your phone, not your data. You surrender your will. The day you can't opt out. The most dangerous part of dependency is you don't notice it until you can't opt out. You thought you were in control until one app update locks you out of your account, until the platform bans your access, until the payment system collapses, until the grid goes down. And suddenly, you're not just inconvenienced, you're paralyzed. Because you weren't just using the system, you were built into it. And without it, you feel like no one. That's not empowerment. That's imprisonment, disguised as convenience. You can still take it back. Dependency doesn't have to be your destiny. You can unlearn the fear of effort. You can rewire your mind for resilience. You can remember what life felt like before everything was automated. Try this. Go somewhere without your phone. Cook a full meal from scratch. Fix something with your hands. Read a physical book cover to cover. Solve a problem without asking Google. Not because it's better, but because it's yours. Because every act of effort is a rebellion against passive living. Every skill you reclaim is a seed of independence. Every habit you rebuild is proof You don't have to live inside someone else's system. You were born to be empowered, not enabled, not addicted, not automated, but alive. You don't need to destroy the system. You just need to stop letting it destroy you.
The architecture of laziness. You didn't become lazy by accident. You were trained into it, gently, conveniently, beautifully. Every screen you touch, every app you open, every click you make was built with one goal in mind: make you do less, make you want more, make you stay. This isn't about your willpower, it's about design. Because behind every frictionless experience, there's a team of behavioral architects whose job is to make effort feel unnecessary and comfort feel irresistible. Designed to keep you passive. Look around. Netflix starts the next episode for you. YouTube plays the next video automatically. Instagram scrolls infinitely. TikTok knows what you'll like before you do. Amazon remembers your size, your style, your weakness. This isn't generosity, it's a trap. Each of these features removes one small decision from your day, one moment of awareness, one point where you might have stopped, paused, thought for yourself. But when they all add up, you become a passive participant in your own life. The system moves, and you follow. The algorithm speaks, and you agree. The screen suggests, and you obey. You're no longer choosing, you're complying with a smile. Friction is the enemy of profit. In the world of big tech, friction is failure. Every second you spend deciding, searching, hesitating, is a second you're not buying, scrolling, or consuming. So they optimize your behavior. They test thousands of layouts, buttons, words, colors, and sounds to shave milliseconds off your decisions. Not to help you, but to convert you. You are not the customer, you are the target. And the more seamless your experience becomes, the less control you actually have. Because the goal is not to serve you. The goal is to remove your resistance until you don't even realize you're being led. The death of pause and presence. Remember when you had to think before acting? When you paused before making a choice? Now everything is instant by design. Instant messaging, instant streaming, instant checkout, instant gratification. But when you remove the pause, you also remove presence. You don't sit with decisions. You don't feel the weight of your actions. You don't question why you're doing what you're doing. You just click, scroll, tap, react. And in that constant movement, you lose the ability to live intentionally. Because architecture isn't just about buildings, it's about behavior. And your behavior is being engineered. The illusion of control. They let you personalize everything, your feed, your settings, your preferences. But don't be fooled. You're not in control. You're being given the illusion of control. You're picking from a menu they designed. You're reacting to choices they curated. You're being steered by nudges you never noticed. Even the smallest features, like a red notification bubble or a one-click buy button, were crafted to trigger a reaction. And when you live in a world built to guide your every move, you don't need chains. You just need comfort. Comfort becomes your leash, and laziness becomes your prison. When convenience becomes conditioning. Every convenient experience is also a training loop. It rewards you for doing less. It praises you for outsourcing. It keeps you addicted to ease. The system is teaching you, subtly, repeatedly, relentlessly, that friction is bad, that effort is a problem, that waiting is failure, that challenge is to be avoided. But here's the danger.
What you avoid, you stop growing through. What you stop growing through, you eventually fear. And what you fear, you surrender to. That's how societies collapse from within, not through revolution, but through atrophy. The cult of user experience, UX. Every app you use, every site you visit, was designed with user experience at the center. And that sounds good until you realize what it really means. It means making you click faster, feel better, buy more, think less. UX isn't about empowerment, it's about compliance. And the smoother it feels, the deeper it sinks in. Because friction is the signal that something might need your attention, your judgment, your resistance. And without friction, you glide silently into habits you never chose, into dependencies you never saw forming, until one day you look up and you don't know where your will went. What you don't practice, you lose. A muscle not used withers. A mind not challenged dulls. A soul not tested shrinks. Every time you let technology think for you, you practice not thinking. Every time you let automation act for you, you practice not acting. And slowly, you stop practicing life altogether. You outsource your joy, your decisions, your conversations, your rest, your creativity, until your days become a loop of consumption. The architecture of laziness makes you forget how to live, not just how to work, but how to wonder, how to sit in silence, how to do nothing and feel alive in it. Rebuilding friction, reclaiming freedom. Friction isn't your enemy, it's your compass. It tells you where you're still free, where you're still present, where you still have choice. So rebuild it. Reinstall the pause. Reclaim the challenge. Rewire your reflexes. Choose the long route. Write instead of type. Call instead of text. Walk instead of scroll. Sit with your discomfort instead of numbing it. Because every act of intentional friction is a declaration. I am not here to be automated. I am here to be awake. You don't need to burn the system down. You just need to stop letting it shape who you become. Because in the architecture of laziness, what's at stake isn't just your productivity, it's your humanity.
Subscription society. You rent everything now. There was a time when ownership meant freedom. You bought something, it was yours. No one could take it. No one could block access. No one could revoke your rights with a click. But now, you don't own things anymore. You rent your life. From music to movies, software to cars, storage to security, everything is a subscription, not a product, a service, a monthly access fee to something that used to belong to you. Welcome to the subscription society, where convenience has replaced possession and control has replaced value. You thought you were paying for freedom. Netflix, Spotify, iCloud, Adobe, Google Workspace, Kindle Unlimited, Amazon Prime. Even your mattress might come on a monthly payment now. On the surface, it looks smart. You don't need to store DVDs. You don't need to update your software. You don't pay full price up front. You get instant access. You can cancel anytime. You only pay for what you need. It feels like liberation, like modern efficiency. But look closer. You're not gaining freedom, you're losing independence. Because the moment you stop paying, you lose everything. Your music, your books, your photos, your tools, your files, your access. Not because you broke a rule, but because your card expired. You're not a customer, you're a captive.
The subscription model doesn't exist to make your life easier. It exists to make you dependent. Recurring revenue is the holy grail of business, not because it creates better products, but because it locks you in. You get comfortable. You build routines around it. You put your trust and your habits into the system. And once it becomes a part of your life, you're no longer a shopper, you're a hostage. Because even if you want to leave, you ask, what about all my files? What about my playlists? What about my saved history? What about my workflow? So you stay. Not because you're satisfied, but because escaping feels harder than staying trapped. Freedom isn't about access, it's about ownership. Access is temporary, ownership is sovereign. But the modern world has tricked you into thinking they're the same. You own a Kindle book until Amazon decides to remove it. You buy a song until your account is suspended. You pay for software until they change the terms and lock features behind a new plan. When you own nothing, you're at the mercy of those who grant you access. And when that access is subscription-based, they own you. Because in this model, you're not the buyer, you're the subscription. They don't want one payment, they want your life. It's no longer about the product, it's about the pipeline. They don't want $99 once, they want $9.99 forever. They don't want to sell you something and let you go. They want to wrap their ecosystem around your habits, your devices, your identity. They don't want to win you, they want to own you. That's why everything is ad-free only with subscription, full features only with membership, 24/7 support only if you're premium. Cancel anytime, but losing access means losing your work. And the longer you stay, the more painful it becomes to leave. Because you're not just leaving an app, you're leaving a part of your life. The psychology of just a few dollars. They know you won't notice $4.99 here, $7.99 there. That's the trap. Subscriptions work because they feel small, forgettable, harmless, until you add them up. Until you look at your bank statement and realize you've been leaking wealth in exchange for rented convenience. And even then, you don't cancel, because what if you need it? That's not efficiency, that's anxiety. They built it that way. So you keep paying, just in case you miss it, just in case you can't live without it. And now, you're paying not for use, but for security, false security. Ownership builds power. Subscriptions drain it. When you own something, you decide how to use it. You modify it. You resell it. You learn it deeply. You build mastery. You control its lifespan. But when you rent everything, you're always one missed payment from losing it. You rely on external servers, policies, approvals. You build nothing permanent. You never feel in control. You become like a guest in your own digital life, allowed to stay so long as you keep paying, allowed to use so long as you don't break the rules. That's not freedom. That's tenancy. This is bigger than entertainment. This isn't just about movies or apps. It's about how society is being restructured. Today, people rent homes, cars, clothes, phones, furniture, exercise equipment, even relationships through platforms and subscriptions for connection. The future they're building? A world where you own nothing and feel grateful for the access, because they've trained you to see ownership as a burden and dependency as modern. But when you own nothing, you owe everything. You owe your life to systems you don't control, and your value is measured by how long you stay subscribed. Opting out is hard. That's the point. They make it hard to unsubscribe, not just in clicks and forms, but in your mind. Because opting out means losing access. It means facing discomfort. It means going against the grain. But opting out, even partially, is the only way back to freedom. It starts small. Buy the book instead of renting the ebook. Use open source software. Build skills that reduce your tech reliance. Own tools that last. Spend once instead of paying forever. Create offline spaces in your life. Each step rebuilds your power, your sovereignty, your independence. You don't need to unsubscribe from the world. You just need to stop renting your identity. Because the more things you own, the fewer things own you.
The death of basic skills. There was a time when being an adult meant being capable. You knew how to cook. You knew how to clean. You knew how to fix a leak. You knew how to write, budget, build, solve. These weren't special talents. They were basic skills, the foundation of independence. But in a world obsessed with convenience, these skills have become rare, optional, disposable. And slowly, they're dying. Not with a bang, but with silence. You no longer have to, so you no longer can. When was the last time you changed a tire, sewed a button, memorized a phone number, navigated without GPS, cooked without instructions, fixed something instead of replacing it? If the answer is, I don't remember, you're not alone. Because the modern world doesn't want you to do things yourself. It wants you to need help, to call the expert, to download the app, to wait for service. And slowly, without realizing, you become someone who can't survive without others, not because of weakness, but because you were never taught how to be strong. The comfort that made us incompetent. Technology removed the pain, but it also removed the practice. And what you don't practice, you forget. What you forget, you fear. What you fear, you avoid. So now we avoid effort, delay, problem solving, manual labor, even boredom. We call it efficiency, but really it's escape. Escape from the discomfort of learning. Escape from the time it takes to get good. Escape from failing, fumbling, figuring it out. But those were the very things that built capability. And now that they're gone, so is your resilience. You've outsourced your mind and body. You used to think. Now you search. You used to write. Now you tap. You used to remember. Now you rely on reminders. You used to feel your body. Now your watch tells you when to breathe. You used to know what hunger meant. Now an app tells you when it's time to eat. Every basic human instinct has been replaced with a notification. And when your phone dies, so does your ability to function. You weren't born this way. You were conditioned into this helplessness, trained to forget, trained to depend. Schools taught you algebra, but not how to live. You were graded on equations, but no one taught you how to pay bills, build credit, cook nutritious meals, change a light fixture, negotiate, defend yourself, speak with confidence, repair something broken, breathe through anxiety. And when life demanded these things, you were unprepared. So you ran to Google. You waited for someone to save you. You told yourself, I'm just not good at this. But the truth is, you were never given a chance to learn. And now you've been told it's not worth your time. That's a lie. Knowing how to live is the most valuable skill you'll ever have. When you can't help yourself, you need permission.
When you lack basic skills, you become trapped in systems. You need a recipe for every meal. You need a video tutorial for every fix. You need permission for every action. You live in fear of being left alone, because being alone means being incapable. So you cling to services, to subscriptions, to experts, to automation. And when they fail, you fail too. This is how society becomes fragile. A world full of grown-ups who look capable but can't survive without Wi-Fi. Why skills equals power. A person with basic skills doesn't panic when something breaks, doesn't overpay for every minor repair, doesn't fear losing a job or moving cities or facing hardship, doesn't fall for every ad promising easy solutions, doesn't feel helpless in the face of challenge. Because skills build confidence. Confidence builds freedom. And freedom is the ability to handle life without always needing help. But when you trade your skills for convenience, you trade your sovereignty for service. And no service, no matter how luxurious, can replace the dignity of self-reliance. Convenience kills curiosity. When everything is done for you, you stop asking how things work. You stop wondering. You stop learning. You stop growing. Why learn to fix a bike when you can order a new one? Why learn how your food grows when the grocery delivers? Why try anything difficult when comfort is always a click away? But here's the truth. Curiosity dies in captivity. And a skill is not just knowledge, it's embodied wisdom. It lives in your fingers, your rhythm, your memory. Lose the skill, and you lose a piece of your humanity. Bring the basics back. This isn't about rejecting technology. It's about remembering who you are without it. Relearn the basics. Start small. Cook a meal from scratch. Fix something broken with your hands. Plant something. Navigate with a map. Learn first aid. Start a fire. Use your own memory. Carry cash. Walk into a store without checking your phone. These aren't just hobbies. They are reminders that you're capable, that you're resourceful, that you're not a helpless piece in a digital machine. You are a living human being, not a user, not a customer, not a subscription ID. And you deserve the dignity of knowing how to live.
Convenience as control. They said it was for your benefit. Faster checkouts, smarter homes, personalized feeds, one-tap everything. But here's what they never said out loud. Convenience isn't just about saving time. It's about taking control from you. The less you have to think, the less you do think. The less you choose, the easier it is to be guided. And if someone else is guiding every click, every purchase, every decision, are you still in control? Or are you just along for the ride? It starts with just making things easier. They didn't come to control you with force. They came with frictionless design. Why remember passwords? Let us autofill. Why carry cash? Just tap your phone. Why compare options? We'll recommend what's best. Why think at all? We already know what you want. And little by little, you stopped deciding. You stopped pausing. You stopped questioning. Because everything felt smooth. And smooth feels safe. But safety is the perfect disguise for submission. Because the more you trust the system to make things easier, the less power you have when it chooses what's easy for itself, not for you. They're not serving you, they're steering you. Every interface, every option, every suggestion has a purpose.
And that purpose is not your freedom. It's your compliance. It's why the cancel button is hidden. The terms are unreadable. The notifications are red. The feed is infinite. The algorithm rewards outrage. The default settings always favor them. This is not coincidence. It is architecture. And that architecture is designed to direct your behavior without you realizing you've been directed. Because true control doesn't look like chains. It looks like convenience. Freedom requires friction. Control loves smoothness. Friction is where you stop and think, where you consider, where you decide. And that's dangerous to any system that wants you to act without thinking. So they removed friction. Instant payments, auto renewals, personalized everything, seamless onboarding. Just one more video. You call it user-friendly, but they call it behavioral design. Because they don't just want you to use the system, they want you to move through it exactly how they planned. Not because you're evil, but because you're predictable. And predictable people are easy to sell to, easy to manipulate, easy to keep. Convenience becomes dependency. Dependency becomes control. At first, the app was a tool. Now, it's a need. At first, the platform helped you connect. Now, you depend on it for your income, your voice, your value. At first, it was optional. Now, it feels mandatory. And once something becomes a need, it can be used to control you. Raise the price, change the rules, deny access, ban your account. Suddenly, your convenience is held hostage. And what are you going to do? You've forgotten how to live without it. That's not just influence, that's power. And power, unchallenged, becomes control. You're not being watched, you're being modeled. You think they're collecting your data to understand you. They're not. They're collecting your data to predict you, to shape you, to move you. They know when you're hungry. They know when you're tired. They know what triggers you. They know what keeps you scrolling. And with every action you take, they adjust the system, not to reflect your desires, but to nudge them, to push you gently toward what they want you to want. And when you finally make the choice, you think it was yours. It wasn't. It was engineered. Comfort makes you stop asking questions. Comfort is the ultimate silencer. When things feel good, you stop wondering if they are good. You stop questioning, who owns this platform? Why is this content being shown to me? What data am I giving away? What happens if I say no? You stop thinking like a citizen and start behaving like a consumer. And consumers don't challenge systems. They reward them. With loyalty, with trust, with silence. And silence is what power depends on to grow unchecked. They built the walls so high, you forgot you're inside. You're not in a prison. You're in a garden with free Wi-Fi, personalized ads, fast shipping, and dopamine. But it's still a walled garden. You can't customize it beyond what they allow. You can't leave without consequences. You can't opt out without losing connection. You stay not because you're trapped, but because leaving feels too hard. And they want it that way. They want you so used to the system that even thinking about leaving feels like self-sabotage. That's the final form of control, when you no longer need to be pushed, because you've convinced yourself it's better to stay. Wake up, ask questions, reclaim the pause. Start asking again, why do I use this? Do I still want this? Who benefits from my habits? What life would look like without this system? What skills have I lost by depending on this system? Because the more you ask, the more friction you reintroduce. And friction is where freedom lives. Because freedom doesn't mean doing whatever you want. It means being able to stop, to question, to choose, to disagree. And disagreement is impossible when everything feels too smooth to resist. Convenience is not evil, but unexamined convenience becomes control. And if you don't pause to reflect, they won't stop to ask for permission.
The psychological shift, choosing easy over right. There's a silent transformation happening inside you. You don't see it, you don't name it, but you feel it. It's that growing resistance to doing hard things, that quiet preference for shortcuts, that subtle dread when something demands your full attention. You call it being tired, or busy, or burned out, but it's deeper than that. You've been conditioned to choose what's easy over what's right. And it's changing the way you think, the way you decide, the way you live. Your brain is wired for ease. Let's start with the truth. Your brain is designed to save energy. It loves shortcuts. It craves patterns. It avoids friction. It rewards speed. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. In the wild, wasting energy meant dying sooner. Efficiency meant survival. But in the modern world, this instinct is being hijacked by systems, algorithms, corporations, all competing to be the easiest choice. And the more they win, the less your brain resists. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. The rise of micro-discomfort avoidance. You've stopped tolerating the smallest discomforts: waiting, silence, uncertainty, effort, thinking. You skip a 5-minute article and watch a 15-second video. You avoid a phone call and send a thumbs-up emoji. You don't cook because delivery is easier, even if it's worse. This isn't laziness, it's conditioning. You've been trained, gently, repeatedly, to believe that anything uncomfortable is wrong. That struggle is a bug, not a feature. But real life, the kind that builds character, requires struggle. Growth demands discomfort, and when you avoid it at all costs, you stop growing. You stop asking, "Is this good?" and start asking, "Is this easy?" The metric has changed. You used to ask, "Is this meaningful? Is this aligned with who I am? Is this good for me long term?" Now the question is simpler. How quickly can I get it? How little do I have to do? How fast can I be done with it? And what's scary is this doesn't just affect your consumer habits. It seeps into your relationships, your work ethic, your health, your purpose. You pick friendships that don't require honesty, jobs that don't require excellence, ideas that don't challenge you, beliefs that don't demand sacrifice, because they're easier. Not better, just easier. And that's how easy becomes your moral compass. Your default becomes passive. You weren't born passive. You used to try, fail, explore, persist. But now, you wait for prompts. You follow algorithms. You scroll until something catches you. Your mental muscles weaken. Your attention span shrinks. Your decision-making erodes.
You've become a receiver, not a creator. And the more passive you become, the more disconnected you feel from life. Because meaning doesn't come from easy. It comes from engagement, from effort, from earned experience. Choosing easy feels safe, but it's a trap. Here's why it's so seductive. Easy doesn't require vulnerability. Easy doesn't risk failure. Easy doesn't ask for courage. Easy doesn't stretch your limits. But here's what easy also doesn't give you: pride, depth, mastery, transformation. You were built to carry weight, to face storms, to do things not because they're easy, but because they matter. And when you abandon the hard path, you abandon the self you were meant to become. The algorithms reward your weakest impulses. You think you're choosing what to watch, what to buy, what to follow. You're not. You're being shown what your laziest, weakest, most distracted version would say yes to. And every yes to that version reinforces it, until one day you look in the mirror and wonder, where did my fire go? Why does everything feel shallow? Why don't I feel proud of anything anymore? Because the algorithm didn't make you evil, it just made you small. Right isn't always hard, but hard is often right. Not all easy things are wrong, and not all hard things are right. But when you automatically choose what's easiest, you silence the part of you that knows better. That voice that says, make the call, do the work, tell the truth, try again, sit in silence, read the long thing, lift the heavy weight, say no, begin again. Each time you do, you strengthen the muscle of integrity, of attention, of courage, and you send a message to yourself. I will not be ruled by ease. I will be ruled by truth. Because the most dangerous habit of all is choosing what's easiest and calling it a life. You deserve better than that. But first, you have to choose it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
Big Tech's leash, the cost of leaving the system. They made your life easier. They made everything faster, smarter, smoother. And you thanked them for it. Until one day, you tried to leave. And then you realized you're not free. You're tethered. Tied by invisible cords to systems you don't control, platforms you didn't build, ecosystems you can't escape. This isn't just about convenience anymore. It's about ownership. It's about power. It's about who controls your life. At first, it's just a tool. You joined for the benefits: free email, easy logins, seamless cloud sync, smart suggestions, instant access across devices. You didn't think twice. It was helpful. It worked. It was everywhere. And little by little, optional became essential. You logged in with your Google account. You backed everything up to iCloud. You built your business on Meta. You managed your life through Amazon. And without realizing it, you wrapped your identity around their infrastructure. Try leaving, you'll see the trap. Delete your Facebook? You lose years of memories, contacts, group access. Stop using Google? You lose your calendar, emails, drive files, maps, photos. Unplug from Amazon? You lose your purchases, subscriptions, smart home compatibility.
quit iPhone, you lose your app history, cloud files, device continuity. It's not just inconvenient, it's painful, disruptive, confusing, exhausting. And that's the point. They didn't build walls to keep you out, they built webs to keep you in. The ecosystem strategy, total lock-in. Big tech doesn't want to be a part of your life. It wants to be your life. Apple doesn't just sell phones, it sells identity. Google doesn't just offer tools, it owns your digital reflection. Amazon doesn't just deliver products, it engineers your shopping habits. Meta doesn't just connect you, it rewires your sense of belonging. Every product leads to another product. Every feature is a funnel. Every convenience is a hook. And before long, you're not just using their system, you're built into it. Your habits, your memories, your routines, your value. They own the space where your life unfolds. And walking away feels like erasing who you are. Digital dependency is the new addiction. We used to think of addiction as a chemical problem. Now it's structural, behavioral, architectural, invisible. You don't feel addicted, but try going without GPS for a week, social media for a month, Google search for a day, your smartphone for a weekend. The panic isn't about boredom, it's about identity loss, disconnection, cognitive collapse. Because when your life is managed by systems and you disconnect from them, you don't just lose access, you lose orientation. Like waking up in a country where you don't speak the language. No maps, no tools, no memory. That's not freedom. That's engineered dependency. When you leave, you lose more than tools. You lose convenience, reputation, connections, content, data, memories, efficiency, community. And maybe worst of all, you lose social permission. People think you're weird, disconnected, paranoid, difficult, because the system has normalized its own necessity. And anyone who questions it looks like a rebel, even if they're just trying to live more freely. The psychological chains. The leash isn't physical, it's mental. You don't stay because you love it. You stay because, what if I miss something? What if I lose my stuff? What if I fall behind? What if it's too hard to start over? They've weaponized your fear of loss, your fear of change, your fear of being left out. And that fear is exactly what makes the cage invisible. You think you're choosing to stay, but you're too afraid to leave. Why most people never escape? It's not because they're stupid or lazy or blind. It's because leaving requires time, planning, effort, alternatives, discomfort, a willingness to be inconvenienced. And in a world trained to avoid all of that, escape feels impossible. So they stay. They accept. They even defend the system that holds them hostage because it's easier. And that's the final form of control, when you choose your leash because freedom feels harder. So what can you do? You don't have to go off-grid, but you can begin unwinding the leash. Start simple. Stop using Sign in with Google or Facebook. Diversify your cloud storage. Use open source tools. Buy from real businesses, not only on Amazon. Host your own data. Relearn analog skills. Own your hardware. Build relationships offline. Spend time without being tracked. You won't feel free at first. You'll feel friction. But that friction is real life. And every time you reclaim something that belongs to you, you weaken their hold. You don't need to delete everything. You just need to remember that you can. Because the longer you believe you can't leave, the longer the system owns you.
The data harvest. They learn as you lean. Every time you lean on a system for help, it leans in to watch, to record, to collect, to learn. Because in the age of convenience, you're not just being served, you're being studied. And the more you rely on these tools, the more they learn to anticipate, manipulate, and monetize your every move. This isn't customer service, it's surveillance disguised as support. And the more you lean, the more you give away. The price of convenience is always data. You get something fast, they get something forever. You get directions, recommendations, fast checkouts, personalized news, voice assistants, cloud storage. They get your location history, your purchasing behavior, your political leanings, your fears, your desires, your doubts, your voice recordings, your facial recognition, your biometric data, your search habits, your typing patterns, your attention span. You think the app is free, but it's not. You paid with your identity. The more you use it, the more it learns you. Every tap, every scroll, every pause, every late-night search, every moment you hesitate before clicking, they track it all. Because data is more than information, it's behavior. And behavior over time becomes prediction. And prediction becomes influence. Not just what you'll buy, but what you'll believe, who you'll date, what you'll fear, what you'll ignore, what you'll support. They don't just know who you are, they know who you're becoming, and they're shaping it, one algorithm at a time. Surveillance capitalism, the business of you. The biggest companies in the world aren't tech companies, they're data companies. Google, Facebook, Amazon, TikTok, Apple, they don't just sell products, they sell access to your mind, to advertisers, to governments, to third-party brokers. You are a profile, a pattern, a persona. They know what you're afraid to say, what you secretly crave, what time you usually give up, what type of headline makes you click, what kind of comment makes you react. And all of it, every byte, is stored, analyzed, sold, and weaponized. Against your awareness, against your autonomy. You didn't sign up for this, or did you? Somewhere along the way, you clicked agree, without reading, without thinking, because who reads the fine print? But in that moment, you gave them permission, not just to use your data, but to watch you live, to monitor how you walk, type, swipe, breathe, spend, sleep, communicate, express emotion, move through the world. And the more you use their systems, the more transparent you become. Not to your friends, not to yourself, but to the machine. Personalization is control with a smile. You love when the app knows you, when Netflix recommends the perfect show, when Spotify makes the perfect playlist, when Instagram shows you the right reel, when Amazon predicts your next order. It feels like magic. It feels like comfort. But it's not about you. It's about keeping you predictable. Because the more predictable you are,
the more profitable you are. They don't need to force you. They just need to understand you so well that you stop making surprising choices. Because surprises break the system. Predictable people are easy to sell to, easy to steer, easy to manage. And if you've been predictable for long enough, you start believing that what the system suggests is what you actually want. They know what you want before you do. You think you're in control, but the truth is, you often don't know why you want something. That new gadget, that late-night snack, that article you couldn't stop reading, that video that made you cry, that purchase you randomly made. But the system knew, because it's been watching your patterns for years, noticing things you don't even notice about yourself. And now it nudges you, not to help you, but to predict and profit from your reaction. You're not acting, you're being activated. Your data can be used against you. It's not just about ads. It's about manipulating elections, suppressing certain voices, amplifying outrage, steering public opinion, social credit systems, insurance discrimination, hiring bias, pricing manipulation, law enforcement tracking, behavioral nudging, all of it driven by your digital footprint. And the more you rely on the system, the more detailed your profile becomes. The more you lean, the more they learn. And one day that learning becomes a lever, used to press you, filter you, silence you, control you. Reclaim your shadows. Privacy isn't about hiding, it's about owning your life. And in a world that records everything, your right to be unseen, unmeasured, unpredictable is sacred. Start small. Turn off tracking. Block unnecessary permissions. Use privacy browsers. Say no to smart features you don't need. Own your data. Store things offline. Use tools that don't harvest your mind. Because the more you live off script, the more you become human again. Not a product, not a profile, not a prediction. A person. Messy, complex, unquantifiable. You are not your data. But if you give it all away, they'll shape who you become. And by the time you want to reclaim your freedom, you may not remember what it felt like to choose for yourself.
From smart homes to dumb people. Your house can talk to satellites. Your fridge can tell you when the milk's expired. Your lights know when you've left the room. Your speaker answers questions in less than a second. You live in a smart home. But here's the question nobody's asking. If your home is getting smarter, why are you getting dumber? Not intellectually, not in raw IQ, but in practical capability, in memory, in self-reliance, in awareness, in presence. Because as your house upgrades, you are outsourcing your humanity. You've stopped remembering because memory is a feature. Used to be, you remembered birthdays, phone numbers, recipes, to-do lists, appointments, addresses, important conversations. Now, your calendar notifies you. Your phone stores numbers. Your fridge tells you what to eat. Your doorbell has facial recognition. Your watch tracks your heart rate. Your home listens for movement. Your car parks itself. You don't remember because you're not asked to. You've outsourced memory to machines. And like any muscle left unused, your ability to recall, track, and respond has atrophied. You're not forgetful, you're detrained. When you stop paying attention, you stop participating. Smart devices reduce friction, but they also reduce presence. You don't notice your environment,
because your devices do that for you. You don't sense your routines because they're automated. You don't plan ahead because your apps will remind you. But this doesn't make you efficient, it makes you passive. You live in a world that's increasingly reactive and decreasingly aware. And awareness is the foundation of wisdom. Without it, you don't grow smarter, you grow programmable. You let the system decide what you don't want to think about. Your thermostat learns your preferences. Your news feed learns your beliefs. Your assistant filters your calendar. Your grocery app remembers your favorites. Your camera suggests better lighting. Your streaming app auto-picks what to watch next. Sounds like luxury, but here's the danger. The more you let machines think for you, the less you remember how to think for yourself. You stop asking, is this what I actually want? Do I agree with this perspective? Is this necessary or just suggested? Am I living or just being managed? Because management is addictive. It gives you the illusion of control while slowly removing your capacity for choice. Smart homes can't make smart humans. Tech can solve problems, but it can't teach you how to live. It can't give you discernment, or discipline, or creativity, or emotional strength. A smart device won't build your character. A voice assistant won't help you wrestle with hard decisions. An algorithm won't raise your children with values. Only you can do that. And the more you rely on tech to fill every gap, the more those human muscles shrink. Because intelligence isn't just answers, it's knowing what questions to ask. And machines don't ask questions that challenge their creators. The paradox of intelligence: tools that think for you can make you stop thinking. Let's be honest, you're grateful when Siri helps you find a restaurant. You love when Alexa turns off the lights. You enjoy when your car alerts you to danger. It feels smart. But over time, the smarter your environment becomes, the less you engage with it. You don't build intuition. You don't practice patience. You don't sharpen observation. Because why would you? Everything's already been handled. And when life hands you a problem outside the system, you panic. You've spent years in a digitally padded room, and now real-world challenge feels violent. That's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to fix. Intelligence isn't just convenience, it's competence. You were never meant to delegate every task, every decision, every process of daily life, because the process is the wisdom. You learn by doing, by failing, by noticing, by adopting. When tech robs you of friction, it robs you of transformation. So you stay where it's easy, where you're served, where you're never asked to try. But comfort isn't intelligence, and ease isn't growth. Real intelligence isn't what you can consume, it's what you can handle. You are becoming a guest in your own life. Your house locks itself. It sets your temperature, it dims the lights, it alerts you if you forget something. It suggests your grocery list. It speaks to your appliances. You're not living in your house is living you. You show up, you move through it, you benefit, but you don't participate. And when you don't participate, you don't build memory, you don't build presence, you don't build life. You exist inside a convenience simulator. Safe, smooth, sterile, but also passive, dependent, unaware. Reverse the slide. Make your mind smart again. This isn't about rejecting technology. It's about rebalancing. Because a smart home should support a smart human, not replace one. So how do you reclaim your intelligence? Practice remembering again. Write by hand. Memorize one number. Use your senses intentionally. Delay the easy button. Ask more questions. Turn off autofill. Observe without reacting. Set boundaries with tech. Let boredom return so curiosity can too. These aren't radical acts. They're ancient habits coming back to rescue you. Because the future doesn't need smarter homes. It needs wiser humans. Don't let your tools outgrow your soul. Don't let your devices outthink your dreams. Don't let the home be smart while you forget how to be alive inside it.
Generational amnesia. Kids who never knew freedom. You grew into convenience. You remember life before smartphones, before everything was one tap, before the cloud stored your thoughts, before the algorithm filtered your worldview. You remember both worlds, but they don't. Your children, this new generation, aren't losing their freedom. It never had it. Because you can't miss what you never knew. You can't rebel against a cage you think is normal. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about the next minds being shaped and what they're being taught to believe is life. Born into the system. Today's children are born with tablets instead of toys, GPS instead of maps, screens instead of questions, AI tutors instead of mistakes, streaming instead of boredom, monitored devices instead of solitude, recommendations instead of curiosity, notifications instead of silence. They grow up with parental controls that track everything, social apps that define their worth, smart everything before they understand what thinking is, convenience before they've ever known effort. This isn't just evolution, it's programming. And when it's all they've ever known, they don't realize what's been stolen. They're learning to be watched, not to wonder. Children used to explore. Now they scroll. They used to ask endless questions. Now they ask, "Hey Siri." They used to build things from boredom. Now they break from stimulation. You think they're digital natives, but they're actually attention hostages, raised in a world that rewards instant reaction and punishes sustained focus. And when you grow up never having to sit with uncertainty, you stop learning how to live with yourself. The disappearance of unstructured time. Childhood used to mean bored afternoons, dirty hands, wandering minds, simple creativity, playing without goals, waiting without reward. Now every second is optimized. Apps, content, lessons, feedback, likes, levels. Even play has a dashboard. Even imagination has a progress bar. And so their minds don't stretch. They speed up. They don't develop patience. They develop dependency. They don't grow roots. They grow algorithms. When freedom feels like danger. Give a child today a moment of silence, a disconnected walk, a book with no pictures, a toy that doesn't talk, a task with no tutorial. Watch what happens. They get anxious, restless, lost, not because they're broken, but because they were never given the muscle of self-direction. And so freedom feels unsafe. Stillness feels threatening. Choice feels overwhelming. The cage became invisible, and the invisible became comfortable. Digital childhood, real consequences. We're seeing the results. Shorter attention spans, increased anxiety, lower frustration tolerance, escapism addictions, identity crisis, disconnection from the body, mental fatigue by age 12,
fear of being alone, inability to self-soothe, no concept of offline. These aren't tech problems, they're spiritual wounds, because convenience removed the struggle, and with it, the strength. They're becoming perfectly programmed consumers. The modern child is predictable, responsive, impatient, easily influenced, reward-oriented, emotionally ungrounded, dependent on screens for mood regulation. This isn't accidental. It's ideal for the system, because a person who can't sit with boredom will always click. A person who can't self-direct will always obey suggestions. A person who can't think alone will never challenge control. And that's what's being built. Not just users, but followers. Parents are outsourcing the hardest job. You're tired, busy, overwhelmed, and the devices help. They calm the chaos. They give you space. They buy you time. But every time you hand the phone over, you're not just buying time, you're selling influence to systems that don't care about your child, that don't love them, that don't protect their soul. Because convenience doesn't nurture, it manages. And your child doesn't need management. They need presence. They need struggle. They need freedom to grow into who they are, not who the system shapes them to be. Reclaim the lost childhood. You can't turn back time, but you can turn the tide. Let them get bored. Let them fail. Let them wait. Let them climb trees. Let them be without answers. Let them sit in silence. Let them make slow progress. Let them feel uncomfortable without a screen. Let them learn things the hard way. Let them be free, even if it's messy. Because freedom isn't clean. It isn't optimized. It isn't efficient. It's human. And if they don't taste it now, they may never know it was possible. A smart childhood isn't about early tech. It's about early resilience. It's about remembering that growth happens off script. Let's stop raising children who fit in perfectly and start raising children who can think freely, even if that freedom is noisy, unpredictable, imperfect, inconvenient, because that's where life begins.
The resistance starts with small frictions. The cage wasn't built overnight. It was built click by click, comfort by comfort, shortcut by shortcut. And it won't be destroyed with rage or noise or rebellion. It begins with something smaller, something quieter, something harder, friction. Because friction is where awareness returns, and awareness is where freedom begins. You don't need to escape the system. You just need to stop being shaped by it. Friction is the first sign that you're alive again. You've spent years avoiding it. Too hard, too slow, too uncomfortable, too outdated, too much effort. But what if effort is exactly what you need? Not to punish yourself, but to reclaim yourself. Because every time you reintroduce friction into your life, you awaken a part of you that was asleep. The part that can adapt, that can endure, that can choose. The part that says, I don't need it to be easy to make it meaningful. Do it the hard way on purpose. Want to reclaim your agency? Start choosing the longer path. Walk instead of drive. Cook instead of order. Write instead of type. Read instead of scroll. Think instead of search. Wait instead of rush. Plan instead of react. Carry cash. Fix things. Learn skills.
Ask real questions. Sit in silence. Not because these things are better for everyone, but because they reconnect you to yourself. And in a world engineered to remove effort, every active effort is a form of rebellion. Tiny acts of defiance create massive inner power. You don't need to move to a cabin in the woods, but you can do things every day that remind you you're not helpless, you're not a product, you're not your data, you're not a machine, you're not here to be optimized, you're here to engage. Examples: don't check your phone first thing in the morning. Don't use GPS for a route you've taken before. Don't let autoplay pick your next video. Don't default to easier. Let yourself be bored and see what appears. Ask yourself, what am I capable of doing without help? And if the answer is not much, don't panic. That's where the resistance begins. Friction builds capacity. Think about the gym. You lift weights not because they're light, but because they challenge you. You strain, and your muscles grow. Friction works the same way for your mind, for your discipline, for your soul. When you cook a meal from scratch, you build patience. When you wait instead of buying, you build control. When you walk without headphones, you build presence. When you do something uncomfortable and don't run from it, you build mental freedom. And mental freedom is the only kind that lasts when the world changes. Refuse to be streamlined. Everything is trying to make you smoother, faster, simpler, more user-friendly. But life was never meant to be smooth. It was meant to be real, messy, inefficient, full of lessons you don't get from tutorials. So choose real over easy. Let your life be filled with textures, moments that take time, tasks that require focus, conversations that don't fit in a box. That's not regression, that's resistance. And resistance is how you stay human in a world designed to automate you. Friction reveals what you've lost and what you can reclaim. Here's the hard truth. If doing a simple thing feels overwhelming, you've lost something. If silence feels unbearable, if making a call feels impossible, if not checking your phone for an hour makes you panic, then you don't need better tech. You need your soul back. And you don't need a life overhaul to start. You need a few minutes a day of doing something not because it's efficient, but because it's real, because it costs something, and because what it gives back is yourself. Discomfort is the doorway to freedom. Freedom doesn't come wrapped in velvet. It's not advertised. It's not shipped overnight. It shows up when you walk into something uncertain and say, "I'll figure it out." When you make space for inconvenience and say, "This will grow me." When you let go of the shortcut and say, "I'm here for the process." That's where the chain breaks. Not because you found the exit, but because you stopped asking for one. You stopped asking to be saved and started showing up as someone worth saving. The resistance is quiet, but it changes everything. You won't go viral for walking away from an app. You won't get applause for choosing the longer route. No one will throw a parade because you started hand-washing your clothes again. But deep down, something will shift. You'll stop flinching at silence. You'll stop panicking when plans change. You'll feel more in your life, not just observing it. You'll start to hear your own voice again. You'll feel your instincts waking up. You'll stop needing permission to be whole. And when that shift happens, you won't just be resisting the system, you'll be rebuilding yourself, one friction at a time. You don't escape the cage by running. You escape it by walking slowly, intentionally, through the bars you forgot were there. And each act of friction, that's you touching the bars and remembering you still have hands. Choose freedom over ease. You weren't born to be optimized. You weren't designed to live a life so smooth you never feel anything. You weren't meant to be managed. You were meant to be free. But freedom is not automatic. Not in a world that profits from your comfort, your patterns, your compliance. Freedom is not what's given, it's what's chosen. And in this world, choosing freedom means choosing something else first. Friction, discomfort, effort, responsibility, awareness. It means saying no to what's easy so you can say yes to what's real. You have a choice every day, right now. You can continue clicking without thinking, living without choosing, reacting instead of reflecting, outsourcing your instincts, automating your presence, renting your identity, avoiding all struggle, feeling safe but small. Or you can choose to pause before you swipe, to feel before you scroll, to own what you use, to learn what you've forgotten, to remember what being human really means. Because freedom is not found in the grand gestures. It's in the tiny moments where you decide, I'd rather live wide awake than be served asleep. They want you to stay comfortable. Because comfort makes you predictable, profitable, passive. But don't forget, you are more than a user. You are more than a data point. You are more than your preferences. You are more than your convenience. You are a soul. You are a builder. You are a creator. You are a questioner. You are a human being. You don't owe the system your habits. You don't owe it your loyalty. You don't owe it your time. You owe yourself a life that is fully yours. Ease feels good. Freedom feels better. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's slower. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, people will think you're strange. But ease will never give you confidence, integrity, depth, mastery, self-trust, peace. Only struggle gives those gifts. Only doing it the hard way, the long way, the conscious way. Only saying, I will not trade my soul for a seamless life. A final reminder before you go. They took your freedom gently, with fast shipping, with free trials, with For You pages, with push notifications, with smart homes, with subscriptions, with helpful suggestions, with seamless syncing. But freedom doesn't leave in one big moment. It fades, click by click, scroll by scroll, tap by tap, until one day you stop remembering what it even felt like to think for yourself. But it's not too late. You can wake up. You can resist. You can reset. You can rewire. You can rebuild. And no, you won't be perfect. You don't have to go live in the mountains. You don't have to delete everything. But you do have to make a choice. Stay in the system by default, or live in the world by design. Because the system only owns what you don't question, and your life only becomes yours when you start asking it back. Choose freedom. even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. This isn't a war of violence. It's a war of attention, of values, of consciousness. And you win not by fighting, but by choosing. Choosing the inconvenient truth over the comfortable lie. Choosing the long path over the shortcut. Choosing presence over performance. Choosing discomfort over numbness. Choosing wisdom over automation. Choosing real over fast. Choosing freedom over ease. Because when the system no longer has your choices, your patterns, your fears, it no longer has you. And that is the beginning of everything.